After Superman was told that he needed to team up with Superboy Prime if he wanted to save the universe from Darkseid's Legion, initially there was some pushback and he opposed the idea, furiously grabbing Prime by the collar and condemning him for killing people in the past. But as most of us probably know, Superboy Prime is so powerful that he's constantly breaking the fourth wall, similar to Deadpool. So he defended himself by saying, hey man, that was at least like 2 reboots ago. And besides, if everyone I killed was eventually brought back from the dead, did I really even kill them at all? But wanting to get the ball rolling because he knew Darkseid and his Legion were hard at work, the Time Trapper then started elaborating on why this team up was necessary, indicating that Superboy Prime was an anomaly outside of time and space, so Darkseid's Legion wouldn't be prepared for him. But maybe even more important than that, Superman would soon encounter familiar faces and hesitate to do what needed to be done, while Superboy Prime would gladly do what needed to be done. However, right after that, Time Trapper expressed that he wasn't able to accompany them on their journey because all would be lost if Darkseid managed to catch him. Once he was gone, Superman was puzzled because he wasn't sure how they were going to get to the 31st century without the Time Trapper's powers, but that's when Superboy Prime literally started punching time and space so they could get there, expressing that it was a better route anyways because the time stream was currently being watched by opposing forces. So after that, the two of them began punching through time and space together, but in the midst of doing so, Superboy Prime stated that their #1 priority once they arrived to the future was retrieving Booster Gold. But somehow, some way, Superman had no idea or recollection of who Booster Gold was, which was a huge indicator of how messed up time was right now and another indicator of how negatively Darkseid and the Absolute Universe were affecting the main universe. Nevertheless, the two powerhouses continued their journey through time and space, with Prime expressing that he wasn't worried right now because he already knew exactly how the story was gonna unfold. They were gonna find Booster Gold, be interrupted and overwhelmed by Darkseid's Legion, but when their backs were up against the wall, a bunch of good versions of the Legion of superheroes from different universes were gonna pour in and help them save the day. But when they eventually arrived to the correct point in time, Superman realized that Superboy Prime couldn't have been more wrong because not only was everything already destroyed, but a bunch of members from the good legions were already slaughtered. And only a few moments later, Superman realized that the Saturn girl from his universe, who he used to be friends with, was dead as well. But worst of all was that somehow this was becoming Superman's reality because according to Superboy Prime, whatever was happening to Superman in present day was somehow making this his guaranteed future that he wouldn't be able to change. While mourning the loss of his loved ones though, eventually Superman was overcome by anger because Prime wasn't taking the situation seriously at all, stating that the battle between the superheroes and Darkseid's Legion must have been super cool and that he couldn't believe the writers decided to kill this many characters. But to Superman, they weren't just characters, they were his friends. But before Superman could continue lecturing him, they were interrupted by a good version of Cosmic Boy holding a shovel, claiming that all was lost and it was time to bury their dead. Relieved to see that someone was alive though, Superman then asked him if he was the only one to survive, to which Cosmic Boy responded by instructing them to follow him. After that, they made their way to a hidden base where Legionnaires like Dawnstar, Polar Boy, Gold Lantern, and Kinetics were super relieved that Superman was by their side. And although Polar Boy wasn't so happy to see Prime because the last time they saw him he was trying to kill them, Cosmic Boy expressed that they were going to need both Superboy and Superman if they were going to stage a counterattack before taking them to another secure location with more survivors from the Legion of Superheroes. Now this is where things get crazy, and it shows that the Absolute and main universe are colliding faster than we realize, because Cosmic Boy takes them to a room where a bunch of Brainiac 5s reveal that they actually managed to retrieve Absolute Brainiac during the Legion War, stating that this Brainiac was not from their timeline, but instead a world created by Darkseid whose every cell was somehow infused with his presence. However, as all the Brainiac 5s continued discussing what they should do with Absolute Brainiac, the story then panned over to a completely hopeless and defeated Starman, expressing that the future was dead and nothing ever mattered because Darkseid's Legion was insanely powerful and enjoyed causing harm to others because they never had a Superman to inspire them at the place where they descended from. But being the beacon of hope that he was, Superman refused to believe that the future was doomed, taking Starman by the hand and expressing that he was a part of a long line of heroes. A long line of heroes in the Legion that may have started because they were inspired by him, but truth be told, he was inspired by them as well. They earned their role as the heroes of the future time and time again without his help, and they still had a chance at defeating Darkseid because the future was unwritten. After that, the Legion believed that they actually had a chance, with Dawnstar asking Clark what he wanted them to do, and Clark's immediate response was, "We find Booster Gold and stop this horror from ever happening." The story then fast forwards to our heroes in the midst of their attempt to free Booster Gold, but soon enough it came to Superboy's realization that it was kinda weird that Cosmic Boy was carrying around a shovel to dig graves earlier when he literally had the power of magnetism. And that's when none other than Chameleon from Darkseid's Legion revealed that he had been posing as Cosmic Boy the entire time before jamming his arm right through Brainiac 5's chest. So without a moment's hesitation, Superman answered back by blitzing him into the air until Superboy Prime decided to take the initiative by clobbering him with a massive left hook. After that, Clark couldn't help but be overwhelmed with sadness while carrying Brainiac 5's dying body, but it wasn't long before his rage took over and he was flying through the air demanding that Darkseid show himself. And eventually, in the midst of doing so, he finally managed to find Booster Gold, which is literally the first time they've interacted since the All-In special. However, as he began freeing him of his shackles, Booster stressed that it was too dangerous to be there, stating that he had no idea what Darkseid had planned and that this time it'd be impossible to emerge victorious. But even though Superman had no clue who Booster was or why he was so important, he was still determined to get him home safely. In the midst of fleeing the scene though, Booster would then express that he had actually been here for more than 2 years even though he entered the rift not too long ago. However, unfortunately, before they could successfully get away, they were then confronted by the entirety of Darkseid's Legion, with Saturn Girl claiming that it was only a matter of time before Darkseid was in control of everything. But as of right now, Superman didn't have to worry because they weren't going to kill him, because apparently Darkseid wanted him to watch as he ended everything. After that, Clark was struck down onto the ground by a laser beam as Booster Gold was electrocuted by Lightning Lad, but somehow things managed to escalate to an even more hopeless situation when none other than Superboy Prime grabbed Clark by the throat, exclaiming that if you couldn't beat him, you might as well join him. But sadly, that's where this issue comes to an end, but if you want to see what happens when the next issue comes out, let me know in the comments down below.